I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Welcome to this podcast of the People's Pharmacy.
You can find previous podcasts and more information on a range of health topics at peoplespharmacy.com. We live in a youth-oriented culture, but if you watch TV, you'll see tons of prescription drug ads for diseases of aging. What gives? This is the People's Pharmacy with Terry and Joe Graydon.
Commercials on television promote medicines for cholesterol control, arthritis, heart disease, COPD, and cancer. A traveler from another planet might conclude that Americans get extremely sick when they get older. Does it have to be that way? Cardiologist John Day doesn't think so.
Aging doesn't have to be what it's made out to be in the media. Aging can be beautiful, and it doesn't have to be the way we all dread it to be.
What can we learn from centenarians in China?
Coming up on the People's Pharmacy, the longevity plan.
First, the news.
In the People's Pharmacy health headlines, while public health officials are still trying to encourage Americans to get a COVID booster, Israel is starting to roll out its fourth shot. A panel of coronavirus experts for the Israeli government is encouraging medical workers, patients with compromised immune systems, and everyone over 60 to get a fourth vaccination. It should be at least 4 months after the third Pfizer-BioNTech dose. The decision to move forward with a fourth dose of vaccine was challenging. That's because there's virtually no data to demonstrate how effective it will be. Nevertheless, Israel has been at the forefront of vaccinating against the pandemic. It was the first country to roll out boosters for vaccinated individuals. While this helped dampen the fourth wave, the country is now experiencing a fifth wave. Public health authorities are hopeful that the fourth shot will help get Omicron under control.
Investigators at Walter Reed Army Institute are hopeful about a new vaccine they've developed against COVID and other coronaviruses. After 2 years of intense research, they've recently concluded animal and human trials. The spike ferritin nanoparticle COVID-19 vaccine utilizes a unique soccer ball-shaped protein that attaches to spikes from a variety of coronavirus strains. The hope is that it will be effective against Omicron and all future SARS-CoV-2 variants. The vaccine may not be fully tested in time to prevent the spread of Omicron, but it may help against future variants of COVID-19 or other coronaviruses.
For years, cardiologists have warned heart patients about coffee. They were concerned that caffeine would raise blood pressure and cause palpitations. But a study in the journal Circulation Heart Failure produced some intriguing results. The researchers analyzed data from 3 large, long-lasting cohort studies of heart health. Over 21,000 patients were tracked for a minimum of 10 years. People who drank at least 2 cups of caffeinated coffee daily were less likely to develop heart failure. This is a condition in which the heart has trouble pumping blood efficiently. Both Swedish and Finnish researchers previously found that people drinking about 4 cups of coffee daily had the lowest risk of heart failure. An accompanying editorial points out that these studies cannot establish a cause and effect relationship between drinking coffee and protection from heart failure. It may be premature to recommend that people consume coffee, but those who do enjoy a cup or two should not feel guilty.
People all over the world love fried foods. French fries, falafel, fried chicken, fish and chips, and churros, to name just a few. A study published in the journal Heart suggests, however, that fried foods are bad for our health. Researchers conducted a meta-analysis of 23 studies. According to the results, people who eat the most fried food have a 28% higher risk of major cardiovascular events. A diet laden with fried foods was associated with a greater likelihood of stroke and heart failure. Additional servings of fried foods increase the risk in a linear fashion. These results should have important implications for dietary guidelines.
Over the last decade, scientists have discovered that the gut microbiome is extremely important to human health. When people think of the collection of species that live in the digestive tract, they normally focus on bacteria. But a study published in the journal Cell reports on more than 140,000 viral species in the colon. Most had not been previously characterized. Many of the viruses are bacteriophages that keep bacteria under control and might serve to maintain harmony within the digestive tract.
A new study shows that older women benefit from following a diet based more on plants. The researchers analyzed data from the Women's Health Initiative, which recruited more than 100,000 volunteers between 50 and 79 during the mid-1990s. Women who reported eating more plant protein were 9% less likely to die than those who ate the least. And that's the health news from the People's Pharmacy this week. Welcome to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Do you know people who've lived into their 90s in good health? So often when we think of people approaching the century mark, we also imagine limitations. Sight, hearing, mobility, and cognitive function often fade long before that age. A relative of ours once said, "It's not how long you live, but how you live that counts."
What if you could live a long and healthy life with most of your faculties intact? A remote village in China has the highest proportion of centenarians in the world. They remain active members of their community into old age.
Today on the People's Pharmacy, we'll find out what it is about their lives that helps them stay vigorous and engaged even when they reach 100 or more.
We're talking with John Day and his wife, Jane Day. Dr. Day is a cardiologist and medical director of Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Dr. Day is a former president of the Heart Rhythm Society and is currently president of the Utah chapter of the American College of Cardiology. His website is drjohnday.com. He and his wife, Jane, who has a master's degree in foreign service from Georgetown University, are co-authors with Matthew LaPlante of The Longevity Plan, 7 Life-Transforming Lessons from Ancient China.
Welcome to the People's Pharmacy, Jane Day and Dr. John Day.
Thank you so much for having us, Joe and Terry. We're thrilled to be on your program.
It is neat to be here. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Well, you're most welcome. You are at the studios of KUER in Salt Lake City, and so we can't actually, see you sitting across from us in the studio, but we've got the dust jacket of your book, and as I look at you both, you look so healthy. Oh, my goodness.
And young.
And young.
And we have your podcast up and your photo, and you as well look very healthy and vibrant.
We've got a few years on you, but I do have this question for you. I mean, Dr. Day, you have this amazing story. At 44, along with being an acclaimed, and I want you to emphasize that, acclaimed cardiologist, you were also, I can't believe it, overweight, suffering from insomnia, degenerative joint disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. You were on 6 medications. You were in constant pain. How did you go from a breakfast of a donut or a bagel and a Diet Coke to enjoying the benefits of longevity soup in a tiny town in China?
No, that's a great question. And I had this strange idea in my mind as a cardiologist that somehow, as long as I was exercising, I was healthy. Somehow I could atone for what I was eating. I didn't think much of it. And every hospital I've ever worked at, they'll give doctors all sorts of free food, if you can call it food. And I just partook. I was busy. I justified it. And things went okay, I guess, until about my mid-40s when it all started catching up with me. And you're correct. All those things started happening. And I was really faced with a dilemma in my mid-40s is I couldn't live like this. I was imagining myself, what's it going to be like 20 years from now, 30 years from now? And I just did not like the future. I didn't like where things were going. And I started looking for answers and not finding answers in the traditional places. And also in part due to my background in Chinese. I was a Chinese major before going to medical school at Johns Hopkins and then later on to Stanford. But that's where I started off. And I regularly lecture in China, and as one of the few Caucasian doctors that can give a cardiac lecture in Chinese, I was regularly invited to the major cardiac meetings there. And in meeting with colleagues and talking with them, they shared with me about this small little remote village and as part of the longevity belt in China that seemed to be immune from all of the age-related maladies that seem to afflict us in this modern society.
Tell us more about this village, if you would, please.
Absolutely. So this village is small. There are only about 530 people. And at any given time, and we have multiple visits over a number of years. This was a 5-year project. And through these visits, the number of centenarians in this village ranged anywhere from 5 to 7. So roughly 1 centenarian for every 100 people. And this really is the highest known percentage of centenarians of anywhere in the world. And these people, it's amazing. They're in the villages. These people are out physically active. None of them are on medications. None of them are going to the doctors. They're not in the hospitals. They're not hobbling on the streets, but they're actually living healthy, normal, vibrant lives and they live this way until the last couple of months of their life, and then they quickly pass on. But it stands in stark contrast to the average of about 10 years that we here as Americans typically live disabled, taking multiple medications and going from doctor to doctor. And I know, and I was on that path in my mid-40s.
Well, Jane, I understand that you were the one who convinced your husband that you had to go and experience this place in person.
This is true.
Tell us about that, please.
I remember the night when John said, Jane, he got off his language course that he does and was researching China. And it was a little bit later in the night in the office and shared with me the things that he was discovering. And I told him, John, we have to go there. And my background is I think we had different motivations. So I love to learn about people and how they live. And I love to visit other countries. I love to learn languages and connect and learn new ways. And that started as a youth when I lived in Egypt for a year as a foreign exchange student and then continued that path with Arabic and Middle East studies. But I knew for John, I had seen the pain that he had been going through. His love is basketball. He wasn't able to go and play basketball with the kids. His body was hurting too much. His profession requires that he wears a lead suit for protection while he does his procedures. And he'd talk about how he was so uncomfortable with the lead suit and just trying to figure out how to hold it on his body. And all sorts of things were breaking down for him that just resulted in a lower quality of life. And I knew he had been looking, he mentioned briefly, to other solutions. He tried like a gluten-free diet once, or, the things that you look to that are popular in the literature and in the magazines and what people are doing. And he found pretty quickly that there's gluten-free pizzas, gluten-free donuts. He ended up gaining 5 pounds on that plan, but he could not find any answers. And when we looked at how these people are not getting the kinds of conditions that we are getting in our older age that we come to just accept, we think it's just part of aging. But to see that there could be a different way and to figure out what are these guys doing? What is different? Could there be answers for us to do something differently and have a different outcome? And all of that together was so exciting. We had to get there. So that was my motivation, and that started our path to, well, how could we get over there?
Now, for our listeners who are going, he was wearing a lead suit. Dr. Day, you'll have to explain, what were you doing that required a lead suit? I assume you are an interventional cardiologist, perhaps?
You are correct. And in fact, I am an interventional cardiologist specializing in arrhythmias. And so Our procedures, I'm typically doing procedures 3 or 4 days a week. We're in a cath lab type environment. There's radiation. And so you wear this lead suit to protect yourself from the radiation, and it's heavy. And when you had developed an autoimmune condition that was attacking my spine and, my neck, and it became very difficult and very painful to do these procedures. And that was, I couldn't imagine going on knowing how horrible I felt in my mid-40s. How can I have a career? I'm going to be on early disability if things don't change fast.
Now, Jane, you've described that you convinced your husband you have to go see this place in person. This place is really far away. What was it like to get there?
How long did it take? 3 days to get? I remember we decided we would take our 9-year-old son and head out on this journey. And wow, our first trip there, we traveled and traveled and traveled, and we were exhausted. By the time we finally got there late one night in the middle of pouring rain, just to realize we were at the wrong village. And you definitely need to know Chinese to get there. I remember one time after, so our first time there, we took in the village, took in what their heritage was, and began learning from them. The second time we went, we started to see changes in the village of Western ways coming in because people from around China are starting to come to this village to be healed. And they were bringing with them some of the Western ways. So we started to see things like soda pop, and we lamented the fact. And I remember we thought, oh no, will our coming here and telling the story bring more people and bring more of this direction to this village? But we realized, no, nobody can really get here. Like, it's just so difficult to get to. And the younger generations speak Mandarin, but the older generations there have their own Huang dialect. And so you really, it takes a lot of time and a lot of expertise to get to this place. We finally did find the right village the next morning on that first trip. And we did go straight to see our favorite centenarian that we had learned about that far was Boxin.
If I might add one thing, Joe and Terry, is that was really the secret to this village, is that they were geographically isolated. They were cut off from the rest of China and the rest of the world. And just coming there, I remember back on that first day and seeing this Boxin character, the only male of the Centenarians, and seeing him at 110 plus years of age, being able to move as if someone far younger than his actual age, and just marveling in the fact that aging doesn't have to be what it's made out to be in the media, that aging can be beautiful, and it doesn't have to be the way we all dread it to be.
You're listening to Dr. John Day. He's a cardiologist and medical director of heart rhythm services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Jane Day has a master's degree from Georgetown Foreign Service School. She has a passion for international living and business strategy. They're co-authors of The Longevity Plan, 7 life-transforming lessons from ancient China.
After the break, we'll learn how people stay so healthy as they grow old.
What's their cognitive function like? Do they suffer from dementia?
We'll learn about the longevity soup and find out how to get kids to eat healthy food.
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
This podcast is made possible in part by CocoVia, maker of high-potency cocoflavanol supplements. Cocoflavanols are among the most well-studied plant-based nutrients, backed by 20 years of scientific research.
CocoVia Cardio Health is available in capsules or powder, providing 500 milligrams of cocoflavanols daily. This supports better blood flow and vascular performance.
CocoVia also offers Memory Plus, supplements with 750 milligrams of cocoflavanols. This product is backed by 4 different clinical studies demonstrating significant improvement in several aspects of memory.
CocoVia flavanols are derived from real cocoa beans. They offer you all the benefits of chocolate without the sugar. More information at cocovia.com.
Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. If you would like to purchase a CD of this show, you can call 800-732-2334. This is show number 1117. That number again, 800-732-2334. Or you can place the order online at peoplespharmacy.com. You can also download the podcast from iTunes.
The People's Pharmacy is brought to you in part by Red X Industries, makers of utterly smooth creams and lotions that deeply moisturize to make dry skin feel soft and smooth. The number's 800-345-7339. The website is uttercream.com.
Today we're talking about lessons in longevity from ancient China. What do these centenarians know about living long, healthy lives? Can we apply their knowledge to our lives?
We're talking with Jane Day and Dr. John Day. He's a cardiologist and medical director of Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Dr. Day is a former president of the Heart Rhythm Society and is currently president of the Utah chapter of the American College of Cardiology. The Days are co-author of The Longevity Plan, 7 life-transforming lessons from ancient China.
Dr. Day, Jane Day, I wonder if you can tell us a bit about how you started learning how these people get to be so old and healthy as they grow older.
That's a great question, and something that's really what drove us is, what is their secret sauce? How can they make it to these, not just 80 or 90, but 100 plus without joint replacement surgeries, without all these medications and everything else that comes along with it? At first, I thought it had to be in their DNA, that there was, because this was a small remote village, there had to be inbreeding. They had some super longevity gene that somehow could explain this. And to that fact, with our research team, we actually did look at the DNA of all of these centenarians and we analyzed it. And what we found is they had the same genes roughly that we do that predispose them to heart disease, cancer, other conditions. And so we quickly learned it wasn't in their DNA, but rather it was the daily lifestyle choices. And if I could just sum it up, they lived in a way that was in natural harmony or natural rhythm with the way the body is designed to function. These people were physically active. They did hand farming. They were outside. They ate real food. Nothing was processed. Sugar, processed oils, and all of these other things that come with modern life were absent. They couldn't turn to these things. It was a very closely knit village. And so it was almost as if it was everything, all the stars were in perfect alignment to allow this remarkable phenomenon to escape the plight that so many of us face here in the Western world.
And you say that they are actually doing well. We've seen older people, and, they're bent over with arthritis, or they've lost their cognitive edge, and they're having a hard time making sense out of things. And they're a little on the overweight side because they're not really moving very much. Can you describe what some of these centenarians are like in terms of their physical build, in terms of their ability to move, and in terms of their cognitive function?
It's really quite amazing to look at them. I take one, for example, Ma Gan. And Ma Gan at the time was 108 years old, and she would go on multiple walks throughout the day. She was still working full-time. She wasn't hand farming anymore, but was meeting and greeting these guests that would come from throughout China to learn the secret to a long and healthy life. And on one of our many walks that we shared with her, she actually showed me some karate chops and kicks and punches right there in the street. And to see a 108-year-old woman who dropped her cane and then showed me a couple of kicks and punches was something that was truly beautiful and magical to behold.
What about cognitive function? I mean, are these people experiencing dementia the way so many older people in the United States and in Europe do?
So this is something that I wanted to explore as well. And dementia has been certainly a research interest of mine as a cardiologist, and how arrhythmias interface with that. And being able to speak with them and explore, that was something that I did not experience on our many visits over 5 years to this village. It wasn't until our very last visit to the most senior statesman, Boishin, that I started to see some forgetfulness play in on but it wasn't until our very last visit. And by that time, he was well into his age. He was 114 years at that time. And after that time, unfortunately, he shortly passed away. But in the years preceding that, he was still cognitively intact and sharp, and each one of them were. And we shared many meals with them and their families and interviews. And dementia was largely absent from this village and from this group of centenarians.
And the good news is that the things that we discovered that they are naturally implementing in their lives, we can make a mindful choice to implement in ours. It is so interesting to me. When we came home from our very first trip, we were actually very discouraged coming back to our society. We have so many barriers that we need to face and overcome in this society to living well. But after our second trip, we actually realized a very different perspective and a much more optimistic perspective. And that is, we have every choice, every option available to us here in the society. We just get to choose. And so the kinds of things that we discovered that these people were naturally living just because those were the circumstances and that's how they lived, we can choose to live. So they had a positive mindset about their circumstances. They built a strong community with one another. They were naturally in motion through the day. They were living in rhythm with their environment, with the sun. So many of us are living out of rhythm with our technology and our different apparatuses, our elevators, our buttons, so that we don't have to move our bodies. The conveniences that we've created have, sadly created much inconvenience for us in our health and our lives. But they live with purpose till the end. They live in a natural environment, and there are so many, all of those elements we can choose, but it's very easy to choose a different path here. So we have to be very mindful and very intentional, but everything is available to us here, and that is the good news if we choose it.
Well, we're going to go back and specifically talk about some of the lessons that you learned, but first, Dr. John Day, you went with a whole bunch of health problems. You mentioned being overweight, having trouble sleeping, having this incredible pain, degenerative joint disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol. I mean, when we hear a cardiologist has high cholesterol, we all go, wait a minute, why weren't you taking statins? Well, you were taking 6 different medications, so you were on a lot of drugs. How did you begin to change? How did your life take a different track? And how many meds are you taking now?
So for me, the biggest challenge of my life at that time was what I was eating, what I was fueling my body with. And if you start off your day with a donut and a Diet Coke and a bagel and a cream cheese, and lunch isn't much better with a slice of pizza and another Diet Coke, it's not hard to see what the end result is going to be. But sadly, because everybody eats that way, we don't see it until it's too late. Now, certainly the listeners of your show are much more educated and aware of a lot of these things, but so many of us are just living our lives in this fog. And for me, that was the first and foremost thing I needed to change. Next was with my mindset and just I was a workaholic and needing to slow down and to embrace the more important things in life and reorganize, reshuffle my priorities also paid tremendous dividends. But with regards to these chronic medical conditions that I had collected by my mid-40s, by just eating real food and following the principles that we learn from these people in this small remote village, one by one, these conditions went away. My autoimmune condition, ankylosing spondylitis, went into remission. My blood pressure naturally dropped over 30 points. Cholesterol naturally dropped, close total cholesterol nearly 100 points. And to the point now where for the last several years, I've been medication free, and that's how I want to live. And also, part of what I didn't realize at the time is that the medications were also making me feel very poorly. And so you almost have to get into that. You have to experience what life truly can be like, to have your body functioning normally without medications, to truly understand what a gift health is. And our body naturally wants to heal. It's really our job to get out of the way and to provide our bodies with the infrastructure, the environment that it needs. And in most cases, it will take care of us.
Well, you've mentioned that one of the big changes you made was in what you eat. And in the longevity plan, you do write about something called longevity soup. Can one of you please tell us about longevity soup? Is it the miracle stuff that's going to help us all live long and healthy lives?
You know, I think longevity soup, when we first discovered it, we're like, how do you make this? We kept seeing it at all of the meals on the tables, this gray, milky, I mean, it looked, honestly, not super appetizing, but turns out to be just a very simple concoction of hemp seed and water and pumpkin leaves. And each of those ingredients are nutrient rich, as were all of the ingredients of any dish they made. And it really represents that whatever they were taking in was giving their body something that it needed to thrive and to be healthy. And when we came home, I just remember observing. So coming home, I just started looking around and observing and asking, what are we doing here? We have our packaged macaroni and cheese that says 2 grams of fiber with whole grains, and we think that must be a healthy choice. Let me get that. We are so far removed in so many cases from just simple. I mean, the soup is simple, and it's a symbol of how simple it can be to pursue a path of wellness, and that everything we need is so available to us. And they went straight to the source. And here, it just takes a little bit, if you're not used to going straight to vegetables, just a little bit of curiosity about what they are, doing a little bit of maybe Googling on how to prepare. But vegetables can be so tasty and so simple and make you feel so good. And so that longevity soup for me is a symbol, and it is tasty to make and so easy. You could just get hemp seeds, water, a little salt. You don't need pumpkin leaves. Those are a little harder for us to come up with. How about kale or spinach or any greens you want? And blend up the soup, add the greens, warm it up a little bit, and enjoy.
Now, Jane, you are the parents of, is it correct, 4 adventurous souls?
This is true.
How do you get your kids to eat healthy food? Because they're surrounded by other... I wondered
if this question would come up today. It's like, I hope they don't ask me this question. I think the first thing I have had to learn in this is that I cannot control an outcome for another person. So we started out, John and I were so gung-ho, and we know all these things now. We know the path. We know the answers. Now we'll just share this with our children and they'll be on the right path. Well, they're all their own people and will make their own choices as they get older. They are in their own environments. They'll be at school alone. They'll be at friends' homes, activities. So where we are now is that we invite and we make it easy. We make yummy, healthy foods available, and we invite them to partake. And that's about the best that we can do. And they make their own choices. And they may have to have their own path. And I hope they don't each have their own path that John and I each had, where we had to hit a breakdown with our physical health to have the motivation to make changes. But if that's their path, I have to invite and support, but I can't prevent them from taking their own path, sadly. Like, I guess my parents couldn't prevent my path. John's parents couldn't prevent his. So I think as parents, we all have a lot of fear. When we go out and do our seminars and we meet with people, these questions come up, and parents are in a lot of fear. And we were operating in a lot of fear. But I think the key is don't operate in fear. Just make available and invite. I think those are the keys.
Well, I have a confession to make. We promised our children when they were young that we would never talk about them on the radio.
So you'd better not.
But I will say this. I will say this. They have evolved into amazing adults who are really thoughtful about what they eat. Mm-hmm. And they make great choices. Maybe, when they were teenagers, they loved pizza and a lot of carbs, but things have changed. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of hope out there. Modeling.
There's hope.
I think is the way to go.
I think so. That was the other word I was going to throw out there is modeling, and just let them see you enjoying it. And I think that's the most beautiful thing you can do as well.
Tell us a little bit about the role that mindset plays in this program.
So mindset is huge. And when we looked at these people, and these centenarians, each one that we've met over many years, has a beautiful story to tell. They've lived through tragedy, 20 years of Chinese Revolution, 20 years of failed Chairman Mao policies that just brought extreme starvation and famine throughout China with millions of deaths. And they've gone through so much. And you would expect that somebody in their 100 plus, that they would just be miserable. I mean, that's kind of what you would expect here in the U.S. But when you talk to these people, each one, we have yet to meet a centenarian over in the Longevity Village or the nearby villages and towns that have shared with us that they are not living the best years of their lives. They look forward to each day. They still have a purpose here on this earth to provide for their family, to contribute, and they feel as if they don't do that, that their families will somehow not be as well off. And perhaps that because they live in 3, 4, 5 generational homes, but their mindset is huge. And Western literature, medical studies support this. In fact, studies show that people who embrace aging and look toward aging as something that can be enjoyed live 7.5 years longer. People who have this more optimistic view of life get less diseases, they have less suffering, and they live longer. And so there's something that happens within our psyche as having that healthy mindset, that positive outlook that somehow is disease preventing that occurs. Now, exactly how those thoughts translate into the individual cells and molecules and how they communicate with each other, we don't fully understand. But there's something there that can totally change the trajectory of one's health.
You're listening to Dr. John Day, cardiologist and medical director of Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Jane Day has a master's degree in foreign service from Georgetown and has a passion for international living and business strategy. They're co-authors of The Longevity Plan, 7 life-transforming lessons from ancient China.
After a short break, find out how to incorporate lessons from these Chinese centenarians into your own life.
What are the 5 Ps?
What do Dr. Day's patients think about these intriguing ideas?
Can you really reverse irregular heart rhythms with lifestyle changes and diet? How does being in motion differ from doing exercise?
You're listening to The People's Pharmacy with Joe and Terry Graydon.
This podcast is brought to you in part by Kaya Biotics, organic probiotic supplements. These supplements are made in the USA with high-quality, sustainably sourced ingredients.
Originally developed in Germany, Kaya Biotics offers 3 different formulations with 15 carefully selected strains of bacteria. These are designed to increase the diversity of your gut flora and support your immune system. More information at kayabiotics.com. Welcome back to the People's Pharmacy. I'm Terry Graydon.
And I'm Joe Graydon. To purchase a CD of today's show or any People's Pharmacy broadcast, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is 1117. That number again, 800-732-2334, or you can find it online at peoplespharmacy.com. You can also download the free podcast from iTunes or from our web store. We invite you to consider writing a review.
The People's Pharmacy is brought to you in part by Red X Industries, makers of Utterly Smooth Foot Cream with shea butter, helping dry, cracked feet feel utterly soft and smooth. 800-345-7339, online at uttercream.com.
Is it really possible to live a longer and healthier life through lifestyle adjustments? Do ancient cultures have wisdom modern medicine has overlooked?
We're talking with Dr. John Day, cardiologist and medical director of Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. Jane Day has a master's degree in foreign service from Georgetown and a passion for international living and business strategy. They are co-authors, together with Matthew LaPlante, of The Longevity Plan, 7 Life-Transforming Lessons from Ancient China.
So, Jane, here you are in the middle of nowhere in China, and you're learning about their lives. You're learning about how to eat real food. You're learning how to have a mindset and a purpose and to stay in motion. But then you get on a plane, you come back to the United States, and now you're back in the same old rut. I mean, busy, television going, fast food in the event that you're in a hurry, just eating on the. How do you make that transition from the lifestyle that you learned about in this tiny village in China to what is normal everyday life in America?
I'll tell you, it is a daily struggle. And we here in our society every day have to make so many choices. The Centenarians, they did this without making a choice. They did this because they had to. They lived the way they did. We come back here and we have so many choices to make. So on a daily basis, I actually have the 5 Ps that I follow to make it easy, because you have to take the decision-making out of every moment. You have to simplify things for yourself to make your success easy through the day. And so my very first thing when I came home from the village was I paused and I looked around with curiosity and just kind of asked, what am I doing here? What are my choices? Where am I? And what are we doing as a society? So the very first thing I had to think about was, what do I want and why? And I recommend for our audience, this would be purpose, P for purpose. And we talk about this because purpose is, I think, number one. We have to have something powerful enough to refer back to when we get in, as you talk about, the little moments of the daily life that can distract us or pull us directions. We're tired. There's a vending machine. What are we going to do? So we need to remember what our vision is for our life and why it matters. And I recommend writing this down and having it available so that you can look at it on your phone whenever you need to look at it through the day. So that's purpose. And then just take some time and plan. Plan out, what do I want to eat this week? And make that food available. Prepare the food. Have it in the fridge in little containers ready to go. Because when things get busy and you're in a rush, you're going to go for what's the easiest. And when you're tired, you need energy. And so have healthy choices around you. Take the right foods with you. I like to wear my running shoes throughout the day, wherever I go, as much as I can, unless there's something special where I just can't wear them. But it gives me flexibility so that, say I park my car and I can run into the store. I can actually get the heart rate up. Things are so busy, you have to just have yourself prepared so that you can take advantage of little opportunities to promote your health and your wellness. So when you have a plan, then it takes out all of the complexity of making decisions over and over again or showing up somewhere not prepared. Then pause. Pause is one of my greatest tools that I use throughout the day. So there I am in the staff room and the cookies are there and I want a cookie and it's 3 p.m. and it's the low where you need the energy rush. So I say to myself, okay, you can have that, but just pause. Why don't you go back to your desk and work on this for 15 minutes and then decide? Or why don't you take a little walk? Or why don't you go to the restroom and wash your hands? Or by pausing, you give a little space between the stimulus and your response and gives yourself more power and more freedom, really. And so pause is one of my biggest tools that I use throughout the day. And then prioritize. So here is a key question that helps me in the thick of the thick. I say, what do I want and what do I want more? And that distinction helps me to prioritize, and I can quickly go back to my purpose. This is what I want more. I want to feel good. I want to have energy. I don't want to be sick from too much sugar. I want to feel alive. I want to be able to show up for exciting things in my life. And yeah, I do want that cookie right now, and I can have it, but I think I want this more. So what else? And so that takes us to our last P, permission. Give myself permission to take care of myself. Give myself permission. Say I'm really tired and I think, I'm so tired, but I've got this big project. I don't have time. I'll just grab this food. Give myself permission to take the time to take care of myself. And so that formula gets me through the day. Purpose, plan, pause, prioritize, and permission.
Dr. Day, when you and Jane returned from the village of Bapan, you actually made some changes based on what you'd learned there in your own life. Can you tell us how that went and what were the results?
For me, the most important thing, at least that time, was to reverse the medical conditions that I have. And this is actually a paradigm shift because too often in the West and as a physician and how I was trained at Johns Hopkins and Stanford is that medical conditions just get worse over time and you collect more and more as you get older. It's part of the aging process. This idea that medical conditions can be reversed, that you can get off of medication is totally foreign. And so for me, coming back and seeing these people making it at 100 plus and not having all the pain that I have and they weren't taking medications gave me hope that if they can do it, I can do it too. I'm much younger. I have this opportunity to make these changes. And so one by one, these things went away. My body transformed as I gave it the right types of physical activity, the right foods, adequate sleep, embracing the stress in my life and moving through with these. And so that was probably truly the most gratifying thing. And Jane talked about what keeps her going on a daily basis. For me, it's remembering how things were 5, now almost 6 years ago. I'm now in my 50s, is how things were. And I never want to go back. I never want to take medications again. And I want to live in a way that I can be full of energy, vitality, and live life on my own terms. And to do that, I need to follow these principles that were set in motion.
Now, have you been able to incorporate the principles into your practice? What do your patients say?
So that is something that I now move forward with. Prior to this whole experience, like most cardiologists, we started out with prescription medications, and when prescription medications were no longer effective, we quickly moved to procedures. Now, I start with lifestyle medicine. Now, not all of my patients are willing to go down that path, but you would be surprised. And in fact, I've been most surprised by my patients at how many are willing to pay whatever price they need to pay to avoid medications and avoid procedures and to rid themselves of these cardiac conditions. And indeed, if people followed the principles of this book, at least 80 to 90% of the cases I see every day would never happen. And so that has been most enlightening. Now, not everyone can do that, and I try to help them the best that I can, but unfortunately, I can't be with them every single day. But in reaching out through blog and podcast, in our clinic visits, and with my nurses and the other staff, creating that awareness for them, and many have been able to effectively reverse their heart conditions.
Now, hang on just a sec. I'm going to play devil's advocate, so here,
all right.
Fair notice. You specialize in arrhythmias, irregular heart rhythms, like atrial fibrillation. And I would have to say that an awful lot of your cardiology colleagues would say, well, we don't exactly know what causes arrhythmias. What we do know is that if we do interventional cardiology, we can reverse them. We can put a catheter into the heart and, use a little technique that'll change the physiology of the heart, and we can get rid of those arrhythmias. Are you saying that you can actually reverse some arrhythmias with lifestyle changes and diet?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Now, there are some, in all fairness, for example, supraventricular tachycardia, SVT, or some of these other conditions where it was an electrical abnormality likely from birth. But there are many. Atrial fibrillation. In fact, I love where our field is going with this greater awareness. Just in the last year or two, for example, there was a publication in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology showing that with lifestyle changes, including weight loss, that in this large group of patients, that fully 50% were able to put their atrial fibrillation into remission without drugs, without procedures. Now, that's not everyone, but 50% in a major publication, peer-reviewed, randomized, controlled trial. And so there is hope there.
All I have to say is, wow, that's fantastic.
It's amazing. If you consider what the alternative is, a lifetime of medications, of procedures, etc., that fully 50% can put their atrial fibrillation into remission with aggressive lifestyle modification, including weight loss.
Now, I do have one other question, and that has to do with exercise. I see a lot of people at the gym kind of gritting their teeth on the treadmill or, lifting weights, and they look like they're in agony. Or some people are running on the side of the road, breathing in the smog from the cars in front of them and just sort of going, I've got to exercise. It's good for me. And in your book, you talk about being in motion, and you quote one of the people in this village, "What I have done all my life is not exercise. It's simply my life." Can you explain that, please?
That was something that really caught me quite off guard, is when I first rather naively went over there and talked with them, asking them what do they do for exercise. I got that deer in the headlight look. They didn't exercise for the sake of exercising, but rather if you're trying to support your family with hand farming throughout the day, you're going to use every muscle group. You're going to be carrying 50, 60, 70-pound loads of vegetables on your back up and down these mountain terraces going from one plot of land to the next. And so their entire day was one of low impact activity on their joints, physically active, up and down, and using every muscle group. Now, here in the U.S., we don't have that luxury, at least many of us, and I don't choose to take up hand farming. I love my job as a cardiologist, and I want to be a cardiologist, and hand farming, quite frankly, isn't what I want to do for the rest of my life. But that doesn't mean we're out of luck. We can replicate those same lessons, and while we may have to use it in the form of exercise, we can replicate it and achieve similar results to what they have there. And I like where you what you were talking about, grueling it out, gritting it out with exercise. And there's something there about a mindset component. And I'm asked all the time, Dr. Day, which exercise should I do? And my answer is always the same: what you enjoy doing. Because the mindset component to exercise is every bit as important as killing yourself on a treadmill or wherever else, trying to atone for what you ate or to try to bank up enough calories that you can then go and get a muffin and a latte after you're done. That can completely undo what's there. And in fact, studies will support that the mindset component to exercise is every bit as important as moving our body. And it's a way of mindfulness. exercise can be a form of meditation and letting go of a lot of the stress that is burdening us in modern life.
It is so important that we recognize that we can eat and take care of ourselves without guilt. We have so much, people saying, oh, I'm eating too much or eating the wrong foods or I shouldn't eat that. And also with exercise, I need to exercise to burn that off. And in our classes at the gym, when we came back from the village, I had 2 classes, one in Pilates where she said, oh, who had Halloween candy? Okay, squeeze your thigh harder, squeeze it out. I mean, what kind of a mindset is that about what we're eating and then like how we have to atone for it, as John said. And then in the cycle class, she says, who's going to have pie at Thanksgiving? Naughty, naughty, you better cycle faster. And so with this kind of mindset, I mean, people are just, we're always trying to go on diets in our society and try to shun certain foods or certain amounts. And it's such a struggle. But that doesn't exist at all in the village because they're eating real food. And so we came home with this idea in mind, okay, real food first. And as we look to real food first, we can eat as much as we want. And we actually get satisfied and we don't have to scrimp or atone or anything. And so that is a huge mindset shift that I became aware of coming back, because I was part of that mindset. I was going to the gym to burn off those calories and feeling like, oh, I ate this thing and I'm such a bad person. So it is freedom to shift our mindset around those items for sure.
Jane Day, Dr. John Day, thank you so much for talking with us on the People's Pharmacy today.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I'm a big fan of your podcast, and it's so great to be a part of your program.
I love your work and really have enjoyed this time with you today. Thank you.
You've been listening to Jane Day. She has master's degrees from Georgetown School of Foreign Service and the University of California at Santa Cruz. Her husband, Dr. John Day, is a cardiologist and medical director of Heart Rhythm Services at Intermountain Medical Center in Salt Lake City, Utah. He earned his medical degree at Johns Hopkins University and completed his cardiology training at Stanford University. Dr. Day is a former president of the Heart Rhythm Society and is currently president of the Utah chapter of the American College of Cardiology. His website is drjohnday.com. The Days are co-authors, together with Matthew LaPlante, of The Longevity Plan, 7 Life-Transforming Lessons from Ancient China.
Lynn Siegel produced today's show. Al Wodarski is the engineer. Dave Graydon edits our interviews.
The People's Pharmacy is produced at the studios of North Carolina Public Radio, WUNC.
The People's Pharmacy theme music is by B.J. Liederman.
The People's Pharmacy is made possible in part by Red-X Industries, makers of Utterly Smooth Extra Care 20 cream with 20% urea for extra skin protection. 800-345-7339. Online at uttercream.com.
To buy a CD of today's show or any other People's Pharmacy broadcast, you can call 800-732-2334. Today's show is 1117. The number again, 800-732-2334, online at peoplespharmacy.com.
When you visit the site, you can tell us what you think about today's show. Do you have a relative who lived a long and vigorous life? Please share your longevity story in the comments section for today's show.
You can also sign up for our free online newsletter, and you can get our podcast. You can listen at your own convenience or share it with a friend. Never miss another People's Pharmacy show again. In Durham, North Carolina, I'm Joe Graydon.
And I'm Terry Graydon. Thanks for listening. Please join us again next week. Thank you for listening to the People's Pharmacy Podcast. It's an honor and a pleasure to bring you our award-winning program week in and week out. But producing and distributing this show as a free podcast takes time and costs money.
If you like what we do and you'd like to help us continue to produce high-quality, independent healthcare journalism, please consider chipping in.
All you have to do is go to peoplespharmacy.com/donate.
Whether it's just one time or a monthly donation, you can be part of the team that makes this show possible. Thank you for your continued loyalty and support. We couldn't make our show without you.